all of us are, how should I put it, proud Indians. And so one of the things that you look at, and that's why I love this, the first slide that we have, which is saying, in a way, we are going back to the future. So we never had this, very rarely do we look at data, but as, you know, we, as partners, we love looking at data. So we saw data, we found data going back all the way to 1820, and looked at the GDP of the world, and then we started looking at it today, and what the likely situation is. So if I actually look at it, India was always one of the top two economies in the world in 18 years. And over the last 100, in fact 200 years, we've actually lost some of that positions. The Americas have done well and Europe has done well. Last 20 years, if you see, we've actually started coming back. And we believe that you can look at it and maybe do plus or minus 1 or 2 years. By 2047, which is now our centenary year, if I call it that, India will again be a top 2 economy in the world. And not only that, but every Indian, if I think of it, right, we will be about 15, 17, 18% of the world population. We will also be 15, 17, 18% of the world GDP. So, every individual will count as one. So I think that's the first thing. Now, to do that, and that's where you've actually seen the government has come out with this whole concept of Viksit Bharat, and there are multiple pillars. So while I think the GDP is one part, we believe that health is one of the key cornerstones, because you're only as good as your health, right? We can always talk about lot about money and GDP per capita and so on, but if you're not healthy, then what's the point? And so we believe that health has to be one of the biggest components of our future. It's okay to get richer 2 years later if you are healthy, right? So health is the biggest cornerstone of the entire story looking ahead. And on that, I think, unfortunately, India still has a long journey to make. So when look at whichever metric you look at, right, whether you look at the spend as a percentage of GDP, we are 1/3 of the leading countries. Whether you look at having to pay out of pocket for all the ailments, India is at like 40, 45, 50%, versus some of the leading countries would be 10, 15%. So that whole journey is what we need to make. And to make that journey, as we look at it, we recognize that India is not one. We are actually 1.4 billion Indians. Again, I don't know that is even the right number. Nobody knows. And we try to look at there are at least 3, if not multiple Indias, right? Between the geographic spread, also the income spread. And each of them is served differently. So if I look at people like us, we will all have access to health insurance. Why? Either because of the employers who have given it to us, what we call the E2E, or because we've bought it ourselves, which is B2C. If you take the lower end, or the other end, right, people with less income, then again the government schemes with Ayushman Bharat and so on that they've launched, the PMJAY will all give them access. There is an entire middle, as I call it, which is a missing middle, and they don't have any real access. What can you do to actually increase that? And we believe that, again, technology can and should come to India's rescue. Right? So technology will help us leapfrog. And Dr. Chatwal has coined this phrase or idea, I would call it, of borderless health. Right? Now, what is that? Effectively saying that's a means, if I call it that, of taking health, care and insurance to every Indian that exists. Right? And we've actually cheated a bit, if I'm being honest. We've taken the old jam, which was Jandan, Aadhaar and Mobile, and said that for health and health insurance, we will have to create a new jam, which is all of them are dependent on technology. So there's joint health data, that is the J. There's a lot of automation, that is the A, and then there is mobile enabled, so that's the M. And so there is a lot of data that is out there and that is getting collected. How can we actually put all of that into one, whatever we call it, a health data repository, a health data stack? Because imagine you had access to all of this, right? Whether it's your visits to the doctors or your visits to the hospitals, all of the diagnostics, all of that data was available, and with your consent, you now come to me as a new doctor, I have access to it, I can serve you better. I know what medication you're on. I know if any allergies that you have. So all of the treatments can actually be far better. And so that's one part of it. And then there's also other data beyond just the health data, which you can also put together. So that's the data side. I think we have all seen the benefits of automation. Sir here is taking the video of this, but that's the mobile part as well. But automation is actually very powerful. Right? You can do faster claims processing. You can do cashless claims processing, and all of us have benefited from that. But how can I take it to literally, like I said, 100% of India? Right? What can we do about that? We've also seen that once you have better data, you can do better pricing because you can start doing more personalization. You can customize it. The product that comes to you is different from the product that comes to me. Again, that is all because of the data and the technology. And then the last one is obviously, can we make it completely mobile enabled? Right? Now there are so many studies which show that smartphones are becoming the reality. Most people, many people already have it. And if you fast forward 3, 5, 10 years, I would say at least half the population or more is actually going to be owning smartphones. Now, what is possible with that? Right? And I think there's this whole question of, what can I take, how can I make it completely accessible for every individual? So that's the JAM, which is Joint Health Data, Automation and Mobile Enabled. And if you put all of that together, we actually dream that, the ambition has to be, how can we get 100% coverage? Knowing fully well that if you dream for 100, you might get to 90. Today, we are at about 50% coverage. With, I would say, about 35% from the G2C, government to the government to citizen, and the remaining 12-15 coming from either E2E as we call it, employers, or flat. That 50, we want to take to 100. I understand fully well, I'm an engineer which says it will be an asymptotic curve. Once you get to 80 and then to 85 and 90, it will get even more difficult. But you have to aspire for 100 and we think it's possible. 2, it should all be automated, and so we think that 100% cashless claims is the other milestone that we have to go for. The third milestone that we would like to put out as a part of the vision is to say that it should become more preventive than curative. Today, I only go to the hospital when I have a problem. A lot of the effort in every dimension is now becoming, but can I actually be more healthy so I never have to go to the hospital? Never will never happen, but can I reduce that? So more preventive, and obviously can I actually reduce the fraud, because there's a lot of fraud happening. So that's the, if I call it the vision. There are a few initiatives that we've listed out and we'll talk about as well. But that is our vision, ambition for borderless health, which says across geographies, across segments, across income segments, every Indian should have access to good health coverage. We do that, and I think that lays the foundation for taking us back to this, which is saying that every Indian will count as a human in the world, and we will actually be, amongst the top economies in the world. So I would say that's the gist of it, and there's a lot more. The only way to pull that off is all the stakeholders, whether it is the hospitals, the doctors, the providers, whether it is the payers, which is the insurers, whether it is the administrators like the TPAs, whether it is the government and the policymakers, everybody has a very critical role to play. There is no one stakeholder who can pull this off, right? Sorry, and the employers as well, because there are some very interesting examples. In Korea, there are companies where they say that if you don't get a health checkup done, you will not get a bonus. Right? So how do you help increase this whole preventive thing? It sounds, we tried to do it in our firm and we didn't succeed because people said you're impinging on our privacy. How can you decide, right, on my freedom? But if you actually think about it, right, it's not a bad thought, right? So again, all of us, right, employers, providers, payers, government, policymakers, administrators, all have a big role to play in this vision. So I think that's where, that's the, I would say, the thought behind this. Talking
Thank you, Alpesh.